I gave up my crown, Sam. I bent the knee. I'm not king in the north anymore.
I'm not talking about the king in the north. I'm talking about the king of the bloody Seven Kingdoms.
When everyone found out Jon Snow was actually a Targaryen, the Western internet on Reddit went totally wild. People were busy doing the math on who's the rightful heir like it was a legal case. But honestly, Chinese viewers were just saying, this dude is that neat. In our eyes, Jon is a political newbie with a purity complex. That's a one-way ticket to the same chopping block as Ned Stark. We're always debating if she's actually capable, but we couldn't care less about his royal blood.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
There's a famous saying in China, if you go back far enough, every family was once royalty. It's not 100% true, but it shows our vibe. We just don't buy that noble blood hype. It's a huge cultural gap. So, today, let's talk about why Chinese people are immune to the whole aristocracy scene. From landowners to employees, the death of the Chinese aristocracy. Let's go back to that saying. If you go back far enough, every family was once royalty. There's actually some truth to that, because in China, many surnames were originally gifts from the emperor. Basically, if you did a great job for the emperor, he'd reward you with a piece of land. Over time, the name of the land became your family name, a permanent ID card for your territory. The most famous gift giving happened about 3,000 years ago during the Zhou dynasty. The emperor's family name was Ji. He gave land to his brothers, and they actually changed their names based on those places. My own surname actually came from the royal Ji line 3,000 years ago. So I guess you could say I'm royal descendant. But honestly, who cares? Who cares? In the West, nobles and kings had a contract. Barons supported the king, and in return, they got to keep their land forever. But in ancient China, it didn't work like that. Since the emperor gave you the name and the land, he could also take it back. Your power came 100% from him. In the West, they have a saying, my fief is my castle. It means your land is yours, period. But in ancient China, the rule was 普天之下，莫非王土；率土之滨，莫非王臣。Every inch of land under heaven belongs to the king. Nobles weren't really the master of the land. They were more like tenants paying rent to the emperor. If a new emperor took over or a new dynasty started, the old nobles would just disappear, and the new crew would move in. If your noble power doesn't actually stay in the family, then what's the point of having a fancy title? To make things even worse, China officially scrapped the whole land gifting system 2,000 years ago during the Qing dynasty. They replaced it with the prefecture and county system. The prefecture and county system was China's secret weapon for staying unified for 2,000 years. Think of it this way. In the old system, like feudalism, the emperor gave land to the relatives like it was a permanent gift. But with this new system, the emperor said, nope, all land belongs to me. It stopped giving land away and started hiring professional managers to run things. These officials didn't own the place. They could be fired or moved at any time. This changed everything. It meant your status wasn't about who your dad was, but about how well you did your job. This is exactly why Chinese people stopped worshipping noble blood so early. Because for us, a title was just a temporary job, not a permanent identity. Think of it this way. The emperor fired all the small business owners and replaced them with CEOs. If a CEO messed up, he got fired. but the shares always stayed in the hand of the chairman, the emperor. So, Chinese people aren't actually interested of being nobles. We all want to be the emperor. The emperor complex. Why every Chinese peasant dreams of the throne. Why did Henry II just declare himself king of France? Because back then, Western nobility played by a very specific set of rules. In England, he was the big boss, but in France, even though he owned way more land than the actual French king, his title was just duke or count. According to their contracts, he was still technically a tenant of the French king. That kind of thing would never happen in China. Nobody wants to be just a lord. Everyone wants to be the emperor. Chinese history is basically one giant loop. Things fall apart, then they come back together. Small groups fight until one big empire wins. Then that empire gets too big, loses control, and breaks back into small groups. Rinse and repeat. Why? Because everyone wants to be the one and only. In ancient China, being the emperor meant having unlimited power. Nobody can resist that kind of temptation. Take Yuan Shikai in 1915. He was already the president, but his general just treated him like a big brother instead of a master. He hated that. He thought, if I bring back the king and subject system and give these guys fancy noble titles, they will finally listen to me. He even wanted his son to inherit his power like a royal family. To make it look like people loved him, he even hired badgers and sex workers to form cheering groups to back him to be king. It was a total crisis. Even after 1949, this crazy emperor dreaming didn't go away. In 1982, a farmer named Zhang Qing'an held a coronation ceremony in a tiny village. He actually set up a harem and appointed queens and concubines. He was living in a fantasy world in the middle of nowhere. It's hard to see if this obsession is good or bad, but this emperor hunger created a very unique rebel spirit in China. You might think only nobles rebel against kings, but in China, this gutsy attitude is in everyone's DNA. Our most famous history book, 史记, tells the story of a peasant uprising with a legendary quote, 王侯将相宁有种乎? Are kings and lords born with special blood? The answer is a big no. Nobody is born to be a master. That's why China has thousands of peasant rebellions. In the Qing dynasty alone, there were over 1,900 recorded uprisings in just 200 years. Even the guy who started the Ming dynasty, Zhu Yuanzhang, was originally a poor peasant. In China, struggle doesn't care about your social class. It's hard for us to imagine a place like the US, where everyone has guns, but they only protest by marching in the street. The 1,300-year exam. How China traded blue blood for red ink. Since being a noble was just a boring title with no real power, did everyone just start a revolution to move up in life? Of course not. Actually, moving up the social ladder has always been much easier in China than in the West, because we don't believe in magic blood. We have a different answer. Exam. You study, you pass a test, and you become emperor local CEO. About 1,300 years ago, the emperor realized that those snobby noble families were getting too powerful. So he came up with a plan. I'm done with your recommendations. Everyone takes the same test. If you are smart, you are hired. This way, the emperor kept all the power, and the nobles lost their grip. Even today, exams are still the main way for regular people to flip their life. From middle school to university and from grad school to getting a job, it's all about the test. People think the smart Asian is a stereotype, but it's actually a survival gene. I've seen the ASVAB questions, and the math section is no brainer for a 40-year-old middle school student in China. The passing score is reportedly as low as 31. That kind of standard would be absolutely unheard of in China. In China, people are practical. If you have the skills, you get the job. If you make the money, nobody cares if you are old money or young money. In China, old money usually gets executed every 300 years when a new dynasty starts. So, in China, money don't have a family tree. Seriously, what's the noble title worth? Can you trade it for rice? Back to Game of Thrones, Chinese fans think Jon Snow is totally unfit to lead the Seven Kingdoms, and is strictly based on his performance. He's just a copy-paste of Ned Stark, honorable but politically clueless. To us, the only guy capable of actually running the show was Tywin Lannister. He didn't even want the Iron Throne. He preferred to pull the strings from behind, just like the famous Chinese strategist Cao Cao, the legendary general who chose to rule through a papist emperor. When Tywin was killed by Tyrion, I knew the ending would be a mess because there was no adults left in the room. Tyrion is also super popular in China because he's practical and actually has a brain. As for Jon Snow, in a Chinese TV drama, this guy wouldn't survive past episode 3. Fast forward to today, and there's no such thing as a real noble in China. We mostly use the word as a sarcastic joke to poke fun at people who act like they're entitled. As we have seen, the East and the West have completely different takes on what a noble even is. Some of it comes from history, some from culture. But this leads to a much deeper and more fascinating question. What is the source of power? Is this something physical, like your blood and the weapon you hold? Or something built from within, the strength of your mind or the discipline of the soul? This is another huge cultural gap between the East and the West. If you are interested, maybe we can dive into the topic next time.